minus 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hi, welcome. This is episode 90 of the Launch Sequence podcast, and I'm your host, Space Tomato. Today, we've got Execute on deck. Welcome, my friend. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Good, man. Just patting the cat. He took over the keyboard. So
as with many episodes of the Launch Sequence, for those who can't see on the audio platforms, we've got another cat featuring. Might knock the microphone down. You know how cats are, but we'll try to keep the show going. This is an episode we're actually reshooting here because our original episode got messed up by OBS audio. So I've been lucky enough to have Execute join us, who is part of the Inforunners, who we're on generally, I would say every month, every other month, maybe talking about ships and updates with you, Algorid, and Astropub usually. But today, we wanted to talk about these ships coming up in 319, with one freshly announced like yesterday, and just generally the features of 319 as well. So thank you for joining me. This is going to be our first episode on the Road to 100. It's like our own Road to Pyro, but achievable.
How many names they can get through with that? Like, what's next? The hop, skip, and a jump to Pyro. Something like that.
If anybody wants to watch the original with the bad audio, it's still up on my main channel. It's on the live streams playlist. It says something like the features coming to 319 with Tree and Antares. I would still go check it out. It's a good talk. It's just got some problems with the audio. Regardless, Execute. For those who don't know you, you've been on a few episodes, but for those who don't know, can you tell people about kind of the content that you make surrounding Star Citizen before we get started?
I myself are very ship focused. Look into a lot of the economics and try and save people money. Kind of try to predict, I guess, a little bit about what ships are going to, be better value and stuff like that. We do live streams. I still find that weird. We can do a live stream for almost 5 hours just answering questions for people, which is really strange to me. I don't know. We do deep dives. I don't know. You tell me. You come on. You guys are all better at this promotion stuff.
Okay, you got to get
I'm
it,
terrible
man.
at it. I know I've got to get it, but it's not my wheelhouse. Like,
the ringleader.
You would Paul around. Paul's the next marketing guy, so he just there's nothing to pull.
I mean, I think the focus of the channel really is, like you said, ships. If you wanted ships and the future. So there's like kind of a split in content that you see surrounding Star Citizen. There's the stuff that focuses on the game we have, like the gameplay, what you can do, how it's been. And then there's the stuff that's looking at future features, future updates, future ships, gameplay, and how it's going to change. And I feel like you guys hit the ships on the future side very well.
I think we also brought in professionals to try and work out some of the gameplay that's coming as well. And I do think maybe in the future we'll probably move into more guides and stuff like that, where, as content creators, I think a lot of us are going to be generalists. But, like I'd love to pull it. Like, we both know John Citizen as an example. Like, I would definitely bring John in to help us make a guide on mining, because he really knows his stuff, and then I'll do the same with all the other professions and stuff like that. But this is going to be, like, with how many professions we're going to have in game, it's going to be crazy.
I mean, just by the end of this year, we're looking at 7. And that's, you remember when the conversation, I haven't heard it in a while, which is weird because we've only gotten a couple of more careers, but do you remember when the conversation surrounding Star Citizen, I mean, besides the whole scam conversation, back in like 2019, 2020, everything was about game loops. Please give us more game loops. We want more game loops. We're so bored. We need more game loops. And they're coming in.
I remember talking about game loops in 2014 and going, God, I can't wait to bring those in. So it's been that long, mate.
Back in my day, we wanted game loops.
Well, we had that content creator summit that you weren't able to make recently, but it turns out I was apparently the OG now. So I've seen so many people come and go. I just didn't realize that
oldest one.
Apparently, it came down to me and Paul knew I was older than he was, and so it was just like, okay.
Wait, when did you start? 2014?
I'd have to go back and actually have a look, but it was Star Signal was what I started doing, and I did that with a guy called Hunter and a guy called Chris, and they both have had life events happen, like kids and marriage and a whole bunch of stuff, and they kind of left. And then I got asked to do the Inforunners, and then I didn't actually want to do it at the beginning of it. And then I came in after, I think they had like 25 episodes, and they invited me and Algrid on as guests, and we never left. And then we kind of took it over, and as they and they've kind of, again, the guys that started it, Dyson and Hayes, have kind of gone on to real life things, and the same thing happened there again, and me and Algrid have just stayed.
It's interesting to see how content changes surrounding a game. I've only ever been, I would say, franchise-wise, I've only been a hands-on fan of a game franchise for this long, probably with Halo, and maybe with Mass Effect. I honestly not even that regularly with Mass Effect, but it's interesting to see the way that different people will come in, shift around, the content will change, and it's like every game has its own ecosystem.
I often think about, like in relation to this, I think about GoldenEye and Perfect Dark on the Nintendo 64, and I remember waiting 3.5 years for those, and it seemed like an eternity. And now we've waited. It's small time. I've now waited for the Banner Merchantman 3 times as long as I did for each of those games. So.
Have you played the GoldenEye? Was it a remaster recently that came out?
No, I don't actually do a lot of Nintendo stuff anymore.
It's on Game Pass. That's how I was going to try it.
I might have to go do that then. But it was a great game back in the day.
It was. Oh my gosh. I remember with that game, because of the weird model they had for the shotgun, it was like a gun. It was like that really undetailed gray gun, and it had like little holes kind of in it. I as a stupid little like 8-year-old kid, I thought that it was called a shotgun because somebody had shot it. That's why there were holes in it.
I was notoriously for playing like remote mine, and I knew exactly where to stand for someone when they fell over dead, and it would have the blood coming down the screen, and my character would just be standing there like, yeah, it was me. because they used, when they blew up, they would like roll and stuff. But
really classic game. That's a good game. All right, let's talk about some Star Citizen though. We love 007. We do, but now we're gonna go 00 Citizen or something. I don't know. I had something for it. Let's talk about the new ship. It has been teased a couple of times by CIG over the last week, but we know that they can't really keep their mouths shut for too long, and they have revealed the ship. It is a new E-War ship. I want you to give us the full introduction on it. What are your thoughts? Why is it happening now? And it's making a lot of people frustrated. Do you think it's necessary?
I think I'm going to butcher the name a little bit here, but it's the Antares. Is that how you pronounce it?
I haven't actually looked at it that closely, so I don't know how it's spelled.
So I instantly, when I saw it drop on Twitter, I instantly went and Googled it, and it's actually the largest star in the Scorpius constellation. So if you think of like the Big Dipper, and you took the biggest star and it had a name, that would be it. So whatever the Scorpius constellation is, it's the brightest star in that series of stars.
Okay.
So that probably is a tip of the hat. If they ever make another Scorpius, it'll have another star name.
And I'm seeing in the preview that it's clearly very bright, given its function.
Seems to have a unique skin too, doesn't it? Like it's got some kind of red reptilian-like scaly.
Right.
thing.
So this is a variant of the Scorpius?
Yep.
Okay.
It's got some very interesting things about it though, because it is the first ship that has an EMP and a QED. We've up until this point we've only had one, not both.
Okay.
So but it does take some what do you call it, considerations that it loses the turret. The one thing we don't know though is, does it lose the second person? So that's the one thing that we kind of can't tell at the moment. But you could see that happening, like them removing the second seat to put in, say, something equivalent to computer equipment. So
yeah. So it's very clearly an E-War Scorpius. It is a variant, so not a skin variant, a full-on ship variant. You're not going to be able to just change your Scorpius to be like this one. Announcement on Twitter. I'm guessing they announced it on Spectrum too, but it seems like they're doing a lot more kind of these announcements and getting more involved on Twitter recently. I don't know if you've.
I was on there giving them grief about it the last few days, because I'm like, the other thing is there's a picture. I don't have it with me. I can show you later if you want, or you could probably pop it up here or something, honey, if you're editing. But basically, they had the Scorpius at the AIE last year, and it literally, one of the bullet points literally mentions EMP and QED.
Right.
And it's like, hang on, the Scorpius doesn't have that. So when they were putting things up on like the little sneak peeks, I'm just here subtly going, oh, you've already told us about this at AIE.
Yeah.
Ian.
And that's what people were saying with all the teasers. They were like, well, I mean, it was already in the marketing. This is it. So the initial conversation that's coming from it, I mean, I'm just looking at the announcement here. I just found out about this like an hour ago. So it's cool that we're getting into this show, but I haven't really looked into it that closely. I'm seeing a lot of people pretty unhappy about how this might affect the Mantis. The idea that this ship coming into the game basically makes the other ships that are QED or EMP focused sort of useless. What's your view? Is this necessary?
Well, just a note on that then. In general, you've got to realize almost every ship in the game is going to get trodden at some point, right? We've seen it already with so many ships. So if you have a ship and it's your favorite, just be prepared that there is going to be a ship that's 6 degrees off that is going to come in and snuggle up right next to it. We have no direct competitors right now, but they've also stated that too. Things like, I remember when the Prospector come out, they were saying like maybe eventually Argo may release a competitor to the Prospector, direct competition eventually.
See, that's kind of what I want. And I guess, you can make the argument that creating ships that do the same thing is a waste of time, but I want to competitor the Prospector because I don't like the Prospector, but I like a single seat miner.
They won't be exactly the same, but they will be so damn close that like you'd almost question why they would make two like that way. And obviously it's money reasons. That's why they're going to do it.
Yeah. So for this one, do you think that they've differentiated it enough from other ships that it makes sense, or does it feel like it's just a money thing?
So the Mantis is smaller and it is probably most likely going to be almost half the price because the Mantis is $150. You've got a Scorpius at $240. I'm expecting this to be at least $20 more expensive. If it's cheaper, I'll be really surprised because that's something else that a few people have brought up. Like you're losing the turret, you're possibly losing the second gunner. So does the cost go down? So there's a few moving parts there, but I'm expecting, like, looking at traditionally at what happens to ships in that price window, I'm expecting at least $20. So $260 for this would be my expectation. It was if someone's asking me what to save, that's what I'll be asking. I would suggest they save.
And compared to the Raven, the Cutlass Blue, and I guess the Mantis as we've been talking about, would you actually suggest this to anybody?
So this is really interesting, and the person that I'd really love to talk to, because let's just put this in perspective. This ship hasn't even been out like 18 hours yet at this point when we're talking about this. But
have they even officially announced it? No. Is there a ship page for it or anything?
No, it's just on Twitter at this point. But the person I want to talk to is Agent. What's his name? Agent Sleddy. Yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
Because it's got a lot of piracy connotations, I think, with 318. A ship that can do combat, QED, and EMP. It's like really good for locking people down. You have this in a squad of fighters or whatever, and it just helps with the piracy straight off the bat. And unlike the Mantis that just has the QED and it really can't defend itself, this thing still packs a punch. So and I think the other part is not just piracy, but you've got to obviously look, and the person that again I'd spend more time talking to is Paul, because he's really into smuggling. Is what, and bounty hunting, like what can it bring to bounty hunting, because that's going to be a really big part of it.
It'll be interesting to see how it fits into the lineup. The accusations of power creep, of introducing new ships that are kind of useless. I think this is a good chance for Star Citizen to make a case for ships that are similar but are doing different things, because we've seen it a couple of times before. Something like, I think maybe the Valkyrie and the Prowler are ships that aren't necessarily variants but do very similar things that might make people feel like one is unnecessary. And I'd like to see how they can differentiate this. What I would have loved is for EMP and jamming capabilities to kind of get a refresh with this. Do you think this is pointing to something that might change in the near future, or are they just doing it for 318 just because they can?
You would hope, but I personally think this ship, the quantum jamming with the combat, is where it's at, because it allows you to lock them down and fight them at the same time, all in one ship. That's the kind of secret sauce, and I think it's got a lot to do with the soft F coming in. They wanted a ship that would kind of help with the piracy and all that type of stuff. And just on what you were saying about down the line, we've got all these other big ships to come that do this as well. You know, if this is the biggest EMP QED ship we have right now, they mentioned back when the Mantis come out that we will eventually get capital ships that have QED.
Right.
So remember these things, because Scorpius, or the new Scorpius, is the flavor of the month right now. But 12 months from now, they bring out a con-sized QED ship. Are you going to want to change to that? You know, so kind of plan ahead and wait. And you can, like, you've seen us do episodes where we've literally laid out a grid of these are the roles that they've kind of said they're going to have, and these are the sizes of the ships. So here are the ships that are potentially missing and available. And you can literally go, all right, I've got to wait for that one. Because you know, they're going to be making ships after the game releases as well. So, you know, we're aiming for what, 200 ships at launch, and we're not that far away from that.
How many people have you seen using E-War combat in game? Is it common from your perspective?
I think the only time I ever see it, you tell me yourself, is when someone's like an Avenger and they try and drop an EMP on you. That's about all I ever see. Sometimes I do see Ravens and Sentinels, but like E-Warfare is like, if we talk about tier 0 in mining, that's kind of where E-Warfare is, because the only thing we've really got is QED and the EMP. We don't have the Banu Defender or Sentinel EMP missiles. We don't have any of the hacking stuff. But they literally talked about a missile that was like an antenna that you would fire. It would attach to the outside of the hull of the ship, and then you could hack it. Which is
that would be cool.
Kind of bonkers to me. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, the whole QED EMP E-War gameplay for me is very minimal, and doesn't feel like something that I would be willing to put the time into and investing time into right now, because I feel like it's going to, it just doesn't work anywhere near what it's kind of going to in the future. But I don't know. I'd like to talk to somebody a little bit more about that who uses it. What is the difference? There's a difference between these things, though, right? There are ships that can pull ships out of quantum travel, like the Mantis, and then this one would only be able to keep you from going in. It can't actually interdict you.
So there's two parts to quantum interdiction. There's quantum displacement and there's quantum snaring. Snaring is the big one that the Mantis can do. The Mantis can do both, by the way. So the Mantis can put out a massive, I think it's about a 20-kilometer area. And if you go through that bubble, it disrupts your warp bubble and knocks you out of warp. Then there's the displacement, which is a lot smaller. I think it's about 2 kilometers, 2.5 kilometers. I'd have to check it up. Again, you can Google this. You can put in QED Star Citizen Wiki and it'll come up and tell you all the details. But basically, it just stops you from turning your warp drive on, right? And that's what the Cutlass Blue does. We don't know what this is going to do yet, but even if it's just the second one and not both, just the second one, this still makes it one of the best QED ships in the entire game, because it's still got the combat. EMP, I can have or you know, have it or leave it or take it, or whatever you call it. But the fact that you've got a combat ship with a QED, like, I think this is probably, like, I prefer it over the Raven, put it that way, because the EMP is like a pulse thing. This is just constantly on.
Right.
So I think it's superior, personally.
Also, of course, better constructed than the Raven, being newer. I wonder if having an updated ship that carries this capability and is actually combat ready, unlike the Mantis, I think was kind of very specialized. I wonder if this one will make the gameplay more common, and that's what they want to start getting people to do it more, and maybe work on it next year. Well,
the Scorpius is a bit more of a carrier type of fighter, isn't it, as opposed to the Mantis?
Yeah, larger.
So I think you can kind of put it in with the other Scorpiuses in your fleet, and it'll kind of fit in better.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it'll be interesting to see how it all works out. I don't feel too strongly about it one way or the other. I do expect them to prove the point of this ship, and also feel like there's a good chance that they won't. I hope they do, and I hope it makes a good addition to the game.
So I just want to say one last thing before we move on from this ship.
Yeah.
It's actually about another ship. Is what they also found in the files was they had the Scorpius QED, but there was also a Mantis
for the record. for the record, before we get into this is a leak.
Yes.
Okay. For anybody who's listening, if you don't like leaks, jump ahead about a minute.
Right. Sorry.
Nope.
Yeah, so long story short, it looks like there is a weaponized mantis coming. So if you think about the way a QD works, it requires a lot of power. So if you drop that down to just an EMP, it would free up more power for them to put more guns on the mantis. So if you are not happy, if you like the look of the mantis, but you wish it was a bit more combat variant, I think that's what we'll probably be getting. And it makes a lot of sense because people are going to be a bit disheartened with what's happened to the mantis. They're going to go, oh, well, that annoys me. And then you bring out a new mantis that's got guns and stuff on it. I think a lot of people will probably take the jump.
Is that power creep?
The other way you got to look at
adding guns onto
variants,
ships to fill in the hole that a new ship made.
I think they're doing a lot of variants, just like they've been doing a lot of vehicles because they are technically in crunch. You know, they're trying to get Squadron 42 out the door, and this allows them to get some ships made, and it doesn't quite require as many resources. Well, I don't know. You tell me if you think any different, but that's what it feels like to me.
Essentially, easy sales.
Yeah. You know, like how many things did we see to come out on the Atlas platform so far? So we've had the Centurion, the Ballista, and the Spartan, and I think there's a couple more to come.
Yeah, I just I have faith that there is somebody who is keeping this in mind. Go for the easy sales. Do the easy things if they're going to be done at some point. Just don't let it obviously balloon to the point where the game isn't balanced around those things. You know, if they're already planned, we know that they're going to fit in somewhere. Just make sure that it's actually planned, right?
I think that's the other thing too. Both the Scorpius and the Mantis, look-wise, were very well received. You know, you had the whole X-wing thing with the Scorpius, so a variant makes a lot of sense because
Star Trek from Mantis.
It was popular. Sorry, I said Scorpius. I meant to say Scorpius and I said Mantis, but you
no, you said Scorpius.
Yeah, but the Mantis body as well was like, oh, I want this for my constellation. Like a lot of people said that. So I can see them hearing this feedback and going, well, let's make a variant because then we can sell more of this cool looking ship. So that might be the other reason why they've done it.
Yeah, which is it's a choice. Well, let's talk. So that's coming in 318. A new reveal for a new ship coming in 318. But let's take a step forward into the year because last week, we finally have stepped out of kind of the unprecedented phase of probably 2 months where 318 was in Evocati. We knew everything that was in it, but the roadmap was not updated a quarter ahead, which has never happened before, and we had no clue what was going on in the first half of 2023. Now we've gotten the roadmap roundup. We know what's coming up. We have an idea of what's going on with 319 and how updates will work throughout the year. But I first want to ask you, before we get into those, are there any ships that you think, based on monthly reports or ISC or just talks that they've been giving, any ships you think we might see in 319 that we don't know about yet?
So just in the last couple of days, they reconfirmed the Santoki Eyes being worked on.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that possibly be finished for Alien Week in Invictus.
Really?
So that would be for 319.
Huh.
Yep. They showed grey box of it at the end of last year, but they confirmed it again on it was the ISC or the live show. I can't remember which one. But
February monthly report should be interesting for that.
And then the other one was they let slip that the X1 is in development, which they haven't told anyone about. So we've got a vehicle in that, and I think if you add back in the one I mentioned from the leak, there's 3 for Invictus, which is what we usually get. So
you don't think they'll do a new concept?
Yeah, they can always do that as well. There's a whole bunch of unannounced things in there as well, but you there's nothing that's hard evidence that points to anything. You know, I'd go back to the stable things of looking what's on the roadmap. So, you know, something like Salvage or Cargo Factor.
Well,
other safe bets.
Invictus Week ships are usually combat, right?
Yes.
So Santoki Eye, heavy fighter. The other ship you mentioned would be kind of maybe some kind of fighter, and then the X1 is sort of a.
The X1 is kind of like a human version of the Nox.
Right. I guess that can kind of be considered combat.
Okay, video is working on my end, by the way. I'm just double checking. So it must be the connection.
Yeah, it looks like I lost your video feed.
Yeah, You can
Let me
try
go ahead and
refreshing.
refresh. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I have to do that with our grid all the time. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if it comes back here. Popped up again on my end. But it's not coming up again on the actual. Let me reload the link. No? What the heck's going on?
Might have to close down and reopen OBS.
I'm in active recording.
But Honey can put them together, can't she? That's up to you.
Yeah, it's just more work. This doesn't happen. What the hell?
I'm just going to tell you from my end, I've been getting a lot of distortion and breakup. So there's definitely a net congestion issue of some regard.
It's probably over here. It's always over here.
Enough boy. So yeah, he's finally decided to leave. I think the only other ship I can really think of that we've heard about is actually the Lynx.
Hold on a second. Come on. There we go. Jesus. Okay.
Yep.
So that's 3 ships, 3 vehicles. And then there's also another ground vehicle, right? That we've not really heard much about.
So we didn't actually talk about the, well, I was going to reiterate the X1. But yeah, right. The other one is possibly the Lynx, which is the other one that's been mentioned. But of course, you know, they can pull anything out of their back pocket that we haven't seen before as well, which is probably more than likely going to happen.
Yeah, what about the G12?
It's another one. There's a whole bunch in there, man. Like,
yeah.
you know, they can pluck anything out that they haven't told us about. You know, and one thing you'll learn is a lot of those smaller vehicles can be made by one person in half a year or so. So it doesn't require heaps of effort.
So there's an opportunity for ground vehicles in 319. I do think they'll probably reveal something new that we haven't seen the concept for. What's up?
The UTV. I forgot about that one.
Right. That's another leak, right?
And they did. No, it's not a leak. That was shown by John Crew at CitizenCon, and there is an image for it. I'm sure Honey can bring it up over my face here at some point. But it's UTV. Think of the STV, but it's more like, it's exactly if you've ever seen Jurassic Park 2, where he's driving along in this little Jeep and he can't say the dinosaur's name, so he calls it Friar Tuck, and he throws away the pamphlet. It's that vehicle. So it's this little 2-seater, and the rumor at the moment is that most people reckon it'll carry like 1 SCU of cargo. So think like a utility version of the Cyclone.
It's like a mule.
So it's kind of, but the mule can technically carry 2 SCU because it can carry 1 in the claws and 1 at the back. This is just 1 SCU, nothing else. So it's kind of like halfway between the Cyclone and an STV. So it's like a utility, like change it from sports to utility of the STV.
I'd really like to see them start talking about the missions they're going to use to make these vehicles worthwhile. You know, it can't be too hard because we've seen them work on like ravine kind of caves, you know, the caves that are open from above, but they're canyons. Putting things in there that you have to go and pick up and put on a vehicle is a perfect way to get people to need these. I
remember the show now where I was talking to Paul. It was the tier list show that you happened to miss because you he talked about the Rock, and he gave the Rock a 5 where everyone else gave it like a 2 and a 3 from memory, but he was saying is it just doesn't do anything. And I'm thinking about what you're saying now, and my answer was to him was, but what happens when they start to make caves and bigger rocks that you can't just do with hand tools? Because much like the Prospector to the Mole right now, they use the same rocks. They've just dialed up the stats so the Mole can use them as well. We will eventually get, like a big stalactite or something like that has to be mined by a rock that can't be done with hand tools, and it will have its place eventually. And that's the thing at the moment is they have to go back and make all these missions like you're suggesting and scenarios, so to speak, that make these vehicles bespoke and worthwhile. At the moment, they just don't feel worthwhile because we have such a narrow band.
Yeah, the gameplay's not there for them, and
That's it.
it's frustrating, but it's the way it is. I just do hope to start to see that. You know, you can tell there's a lot of focus on ground gameplay. I mean, from Jump Town to the way they're redoing these underground facilities to the caves to the outposts to like the mule, all these new vehicles. There's tons of focus on ground gameplay, more so maybe than space, you could even say. But the missions are where it's lacking right now. And as many missions as we're getting this year, I don't think we're going to see too many that focus on ground vehicles.
You can do the same thing that I was talking about with the ships, where you look at the different sizes. You know, so you look at the mule, you instantly know there are bigger cargo containers coming, so therefore there has to be more vehicles coming. It's just logical progression,
Right.
you know. So we'll probably see something like the big lorries we have of today that carry the big cargo sea containers, something to that effect. Anyway,
A
coming down the line.
ground vehicle with a track, I mean, would be great. But
Yep.
that's generally the outlook for 319. And just quickly, I would say if we did see 4.0 this year, it would be Evocati. So I'm not going to really count that as being a patch this year. I think the other patch we'll see is 3.20. And I think we could see the Hull C in that patch. I don't know about any other ships that we might be able to bank on seeing this year. What do you think?
One of the guys that I think it was when they were talking about that segment with the X1 and that they let that fly, someone was saying they were working on the Hull C, amongst other things.
Yeah.
So,
Technical animation.
I'd agree with that. I think we'll probably see them kind of bring out different boxes too, almost maybe not every patch, but like as they go along in patches, they'll go, right, so now we've got 1 SCU. So here's now a 4 SCU container, and now here's an 8, and here's a 16, you know. And then they'll probably come back and fill in all these little weird boxes. So eventually, as we get gas mining and stuff like that, we'll probably get gas containers and refrigeration units and et cetera, et cetera. You see where I'm going pretty quickly.
Cargo's gonna completely change from what they said.
I don't think they can do it in one big hit either. They'd have to do it like they're doing. It's going to have to be a trickle release, just because every time they bring in a gameplay, you're probably going to get a special container to go with it. You know, let's just look at Salvage, right? What about open top containers? What about refinery containers? You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff down the line. You know, we know that they want to actually show the materials in these containers. Like back when you go way back, you've looked at Grubby Hands, I'm assuming. You know,
yeah. And I wonder if they're gonna, you know, I know they wanted to have the materials actually stored in the container so you could like pick them up and take them out when you wanted to. I definitely see them moving away from that at this point with the way that they're doing it now.
I still think it's really possible, and I know you've played Eco with me. So do you remember how when we had stockpiles in Eco? That's how I kind of look at it. But instead of a stockpile, it's just a container. So say if we had I'm just going to pick a random thing. So like coal, you could actually just have a coal texture that just randomly moves down the container on the inside of the box. So basically, it's just showing you how full it is by visually glancing inside the box, so you can see how full it is.
Yeah, guess that's a thing.
Yeah, and again, if you've seen how they did, do you remember the live stream with the baked beans and the bacon and the eggs and all that stuff, and they were randomly able to move the. Again, you take that from the baked beans, but instead of baked beans, maybe it's something like steel bricks or gold bars or something like that. It can randomly be, so every time you look at it, it's different and random.
As long as they're not requiring some bespoke animation to actually pick the thing up and put in your, like, that's where I start to get like, okay, Star Citizen, how are we going to do this? Because everything's physical. It gets complicated. So I don't know.
Again, even looking at those bespoke animations, like we were talking about this the other day, at the moment when you put on a gun, you have hard points on your body. So essentially the animations just go to those hard points.
Yeah, and they've been talking about that in the monthly report.
Animation blending. We were looking at, we were talking about on our live stream during the week about could they eventually have it so NPCs and characters. So, you know, at the moment, how you walk up to a suit locker, you actually end up, like, it plays an animation of you actually putting your clothes on. Is that a possible thing? And it is possible. Like, again, using those hard points, they can pull it off.
They did it in that CitizenCon demo. Something kind of like a little canned animation.
But yeah, even have an NPC, like there was in one of the concepts this week, there was a guy walking along in one of the town squares type of thing, and he was putting his shirt on. And I'm like, is that going to be a thing? And then and that's what triggered it. And I started thinking about it.
Oh man, advertising for shirt
Yeah.
folding tech. Love it.
Yeah.
All right, so what we talked about mainly are the ships coming to 319, but the fact is that we actually know what's happening with 319, at least to some extent. First roadmap roundup is going to have some features, but as was kind of the plan with the roadmap change that happened last year, we no longer are getting a full patch dropped in front of us to look at and obsess about the features only to have them delayed. Now instead they're going the opposite way. They're dropping a very light patch in front of us, and then as we get closer to that patch release, they add more and more of the features they realize are likely to come in. I like this approach better, but we only really have an idea of like 3 or 4 features coming to 319. So what's the most interesting out of everything you've seen so far?
I just want to say real quickly though, like people always judge like what we're seeing right now, where they're doing the patches and it's really unstable. You got to realize there's a whole nother branch, and they're working on that, and working it internally is very different to working on the network servers. So they're probably a lot further along with 319 than most people realize as well. For me, with 319, when that roadmap roundup kind of came out, there wasn't too much on it for me that was very surprising, because we'd kind of already, they'd been talking about it for the last couple of months. So I wasn't too surprised. I don't know about yourself, but I'm just pulling it up here because I want to double check.
I think it was the timing of it more than anything that was the eye opener. The fact that they wanted to drop it before Invictus Week. So they're kind of doing like a half patch. I'm assuming they want to have 318 out beginning of March, run us on 318 for 2 months, drop 319, which is kind of, as they say, based off of 318's code base in terms of their development branch, not their feature branch, I believe. If you want more info on that, check out the last Star Citizen Live. Jared talks all about it. But they're building 319 kind of off of 318, and then they have that sit and stew, probably a 319.1, 319.2, and then we get 320 in like October-ish. So I originally thought they would probably try and do 318 in March, 319 in July or August, and then 320 in October, and then try to hit Ivocati for 4.0 by December. But I think this kind of recalibrates what I'm seeing for the year. Summer is going to be much slower than I imagined.
So for me, I think I don't know if there's a content creator thing in me, but I think probably the biggest thing for me is the new player experience, because we've needed it for such a long time. The number of people I've showed the game that have just got so frustrated and left. We know they're fixing things finally, like the crime system and stuff like that. But like bringing new people into the game is not just necessarily a bad thing. My only question would be, are we bringing them in too soon? But again, there's this necessary evil thing with Star Citizen between funding the game and stuff like that. So the other one there is the salvage missions. I kind of now question, where are the mining missions? In a weird type of phrase, like what, they've just kind of left the miners out in the cold. But yeah, they're probably the two big ones for me. What about you?
A new player experience for sure. I think, like you said, they need to be careful about how much time they put towards onboarding people who probably are going to not enjoy the game anyways because it's not ready. But I think for the people who do want to enjoy this game, it's a very, very important thing that we make it easier for them to understand it. Because like, if you've got somebody who's willing to go through the website, deal with all the controversy, download the game, make sure their computer's okay, actually get into the game, the last thing you're going to want is for them to jump in and not know what the heck's going on, right? After all that effort, we might as well reward them with the chance to actually understand the game. So I think that's a good place to put investment. It's kind of a bummer that it's only going to start with one planet. So I was going back and forth on that, but
I'd kind of I agree. It is weird that because they're kind of making ArcCorp the default choice. But in a weird turn of phrase, if you think about it from a realism perspective, ArcCorp would be the default choice because it's a whole planet. It's a city.
It makes sense.
It'd be the capital. I think I want them from a design perspective to make it so that they are scalable. And what I mean by scalable is the wrong word. editable, updatable.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe instead of having like bespoke voiceovers or something like that, maybe it's all text based. I don't know, right? But the point I'm trying to get at is you need to make it so that it is easy for one developer to come in, maybe spend 1 day per patch, and that's all them. Like so low effort that they can
Yeah.
bring it up to
Yeah.
speed. So it doesn't. It's evergreen.
Yeah. I agree with that in a slightly different way. I don't know if this is how I don't know how this stuff works. But the way I see it, if they were to create like a system, you remember item 2.0 and
Yep.
and how they were like, okay, every item in the game is going to have
Mhm.
characteristics. This is made of this material. It holds this many bullets. It functions like this in gravity. If they did that for every object in terms of like an augmented reality overlay in the game, so that if you turn on, say, help mode and you look at something, the game just pulls up text and tells you exactly what it is. Is it interactable? How does it work? Something like that on its own would be great for new players. But if they could figure out a way to incorporate that kind of information on a glance thing into every city, I would love that. I think that'd be huge.
Can I tell you the only part I would actually have that's city based is a part of the map system. So basically it goes, this is your hab, you are going here. And it's like, how you do Google or Siri or whatever, and you go, hey G, I'm not saying Google because I've got one over here.
Yeah.
Hey G, take me to such and such. And it actually, you can set it walk, drive, fly, whatever,
Yeah.
and it just starts navigation and takes you there. That's how I would have that. But the other part, like the tutorial and the flying of the planes and all that stuff, why isn't that just a Mobiglast app? Why can't you pull that up at any time? 10 hours down into the gameplay when you forget something, you just pull up the tutorial, load into a hologram, and play.
Arena Commander.
That'd be a great place for it, actually.
Yeah,
and then eventually in time, and move that into the Mobiglast app at given time.
Yeah.
But that's how I would do it, because that way you can still have that any planet thing, and that just makes it that all they need to do is a navigation from the hab to the ASOP, and then maybe from the ASOP to your first hangar. But other than that, like
Yeah.
that and that's just setting a couple of navigation beacons. That's heaps easier to do. And I'm going to be honest, like other than also the Loreville cityscape rework coming, that's the only time they'd ever have to update them is if they move all the trains and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, again, it's just a couple of waypoints.
For the task itself, the description reads, an initiative for improving the initial gameplay experience, which will help players understand the context of the world and introduce them to some of Star Citizen's basic features. This update focuses on the experience in Area 18 and by Genie Point. So they're doing...
It was some of the... I swear I read something about the first 5-10 minutes or something.
Did 30 minutes.
That there anywhere?
Yeah, first 30 minutes.
There you go, yeah.
So it sounds like they're really going to focus on the idea of getting a player into the game, understand what the heck they're looking at, which is the city. They'll probably introduce you to stores, introduce you to ASOP terminals, to mission givers, and then give you a task, I would think. Maybe a mission, but like some sort of a task to take something up to the space station, and then show you that.
Well, ironically, me and Badgers filmed some tutorials, and that's kind of similar to what we did. We had taking off, flying to the station, requesting landing, and landing at the station.
Mm-hmm.
So
reset your
that
regen.
gives you A to B trip, and then when we got up there, we recommended people maybe fly back, practice it a few times if you don't feel comfortable, etc., etc.
I think that's probably it's probably not going to be too in depth or too crazy. I do hope that it's not just some hints popping up, but I think it'll be a little more than that. But 30 minutes is not much in Star Citizen.
You can see where I'm going for, though, like because we don't want to happen what happened with other tutorials where they bring in a tutorial and literally the next patch it drops off, and then by 3 patches after it's just non-existent. So it needs to be something that they can update, and it's not too burdensome, which would be great.
Yeah. So another feature that's coming in, as you mentioned, beside that, is the Loreville cityscape rework, and that one I'm betting is catching people a bit off guard, because like if you were going to make a new player experience like in a new flashy environment, why not do it in the city that you're remaking?
Yep.
Any theories on that?
I think ArcCorp's a bit more complicated than Loreville. I think that kind of covers it.
That's fair.
If you combine that with what we saw this week at ISC with the internals of buildings and stuff, I think you can quickly see, because they mentioned in that they're going to redo the architecture and make the buildings bigger and stuff like that. And I know they've been working on it since December, but still it's kind of in its infancy, because a lot of things they mentioned was about pads. And the very first thought I had was, why would you put pads in buildings when you can put hangars in buildings? Like in Fifth Element, where he parks the taxi next to where he lives and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to have the pads hanging off the side of buildings and things
Oh,
like
but that
that. So
looks
you don't
so
have
cool.
it. Well, another one someone brought up would be, wouldn't it really cool if it just like slides out and then you take off? So you could have temporary things like that as well. But that's the thing,
That
pads
sounds like
become temporary
sounds
because
like
you
an
can't
extra
despawn.
$50 on your pledge for a sliding out landing pad.
Yeah. The awning landing pad, yes. Yeah.
I think, and this is my disappointed right shoulder tomato thought. I think that the rest of the city, the actual landing zone that we walk around in, isn't getting an update, and that's why they're not doing it.
I would agree with that, because a lot of those landing zones are bespoke, and I did bring this up with Paul when I talked to him. Was the I actually, when they were talking about the what would they call them, like the bottom, the lobbies, I think they called them lobbies of the buildings.
Yeah.
I had this realization, you could actually expand that system out even further, and you could essentially, it could be the start of procedurally generated landing zones completely. If you're happy to lose some of the bespoke pieces, like the statues and things like that, and as time goes on, you know how they're building up a library of art assets. You can add systems in, so you can have one statue in multiple different ways. You could have a hologram system, so it takes any art asset in game and turns it into a hologram. There's every statue you'd ever want, almost. You know what I
Maybe,
mean?
yeah.
You get where I'm going with this. So again, if they start building assets and tools and just keep adding them into this procedurally generated pool, you can see where it can go very quickly. Yeah, you just get this almost never-ending procedurally generated universe. The only problem, as Paul and I talked about, was repetition. So the more things you add to that, the more, like, we know they're bringing in the wear system, different material system, colors, textures. Excuse me. You can see where it goes very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It balloons out very quickly.
Mm-hmm. And with Loreville, they've not talked about. They mentioned, I think last year, maybe one time, they mentioned the neighborhoods. But besides that, they have not talked about anything. They haven't talked or shown anything that has to do with the actual landing zone. So we saw it at CitizenCon.
True.
We saw it at the recent. There was a recent ISC we saw it in, and now with the monthly reports and with this new release view on the roadmap, calling it the cityscape and specifically saying reworking the Loreville skyline. I'm, knowing CIG, this tells me that nothing's going to change in the landing zone itself. And I think probably they'll wait until that happens before they hook in a new player experience. So
yeah, I had to remind some people too about Loreville way back in the day, where they had this tool where they could lay out the grid system, and allow for roads and stuff like that. So this is just another tool on top of other tools. So you got to go back and try and remember some of the older tools, which is kind of scary, because I kind of do the math. I don't think it's a tool on top of a tool. I think it's a tool that's been added to over time, and it's just expanded.
which tool is that?
So
The
I'm
city
going
building?
way back. Do you remember the CitizenCon where they flew in the Aurora up to the space station? And
You're talking about when they were building the city blocks. Yeah. Okay. I was just wondering which tool you specifically meant.
Yeah, cool. But can you see that being a part of the same tool now? Like, it's an evolution of that, because now, like, that was placing the buildings. Now we're placing the internals of the buildings, and it's the next step.
Right.
And then how do you have them all interconnected? Because now it's not just that, we've also got the bunkers or the below the buildings, and how are they going to connect to each other?
Right.
So it has to, if you think about it very quickly, it's all going to be done in metrics, because they're going to line up.
But the important point is when, because now that we know this is an exterior update to Loreville, there is a very pressing interior update that we need to bring it up to the standard of R-Corp, which is now going to be the oldest New Babbage and Orison.
But I think that's the other part of it is we're going to get more interiors down the line.
No. I don't mean. I mean interiors like when you walk out of the train at Loreville, or when you walk out of the hab at Loreville. the experience isn't the same as New Babbage or Orison. The quality
Yep.
isn't as high. The signs aren't as
Yep.
updated. That stuff all needs to be picked up.
And I think that all can come, especially if they do the procedurally generation stuff, because they can expand what they already have.
hmm
You know,
Yeah.
like the way what these, like if you just look at it, it's tools on tools. Like you can see how procedurally generated planets would have tech that also has procedurally generated cities, and then they have the room system, and like it's just tools on tools on tools. They're just expanding,
Yeah.
and you can like like I had this real epiphany when I saw the stuff on ISC this week. Like I can now see the full loop of how these all work together. Like so we now, like how caves interacted with the terrain, and the example I gave to Paul was, do you remember how big it was when we first saw Pubertal Planet? Like where we can go from the space and fly all the way down and land on a planet. It's now the same thing. I can now see how the buildings are now connected to the terrain. So we can now actually go all the way through a building and down through the ground and actually come up and be on a place. And it now is the first game I think we can ever actually truly look at and go, I can see that. I can actually go there, because we've never had the ability to go into buildings like this in any game that I'm aware of. Like I know we've had like a building and it might have, one room in it that you can go to, but we've never actually had, like, if you are that way inclined, you can go to the 7th floor to the 44th room and go there. There might not be anything there. The door might be locked. You might have to bash it down, but you can go there. If you need to get there, you'll be able to go there. And that just blows my mind.
I will be hard pressed to see how many floors they actually populate with things, but
Right.
I do think that it's going to be a pretty expansive system once they get it working. But
Yeah.
that is the building interiors feature, which we will get to, but isn't necessarily coming in 3.19. It's something that they've been talking about for the future
sorry.
of cities. No, it's fine. I just don't want people to think that that's going to come in 3.19, because that'd be awesome.
But they are interconnected, because quite honestly, I think the Loreville cityscape is the first step, and then that's probably the one after that, right? So they're probably redoing. Well, think about it. They said they're redoing the architecture of the buildings so they can do the interiors of them.
Oh yeah, this is absolutely resizing the buildings for that. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So another thing coming in 3.19 is salvage contracts, as you mentioned, which is freaking fantastic, because I think this is one of the most important things of any part of this game, is making a mission out of something to force the feature's use. Like Xenothreat, I think, was kind of the first time that people really started to realize how useful the tractor beams were. Salvage contracts are going to be a great way to push newcomers and people who are more curious or nervous about going out on their own to just take up an easy salvage job. What do you think about these coming in?
I was going to say, it definitely motivates people to actually get out there and do salvage too. There were a lot of people that was a bit blasé about mining. And as I said before, I do hope they kind of add some mining ones in there as well, while if they've got the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just, I want to see not just not solo ones. I want both, so I want to, like, one that goes, go out and you reclaimer with 5 buddies, or go out and you reclaim, because also it's going to show us that economics of scale. Can you legitimately do a reclaimer mission solo if you choose to, and it's going to answer a lot of questions, is what I'm saying.
It sounds like they're offering that with so they've got 3 different versions. Lawful, where you kind of just, somebody gives you a wreck, they've towed into the station and say, go get this, you keep what you get. Unlawful, no, I think it's illegal missions, which are like, you steal the coordinates and go steal somebody else's wreck. And then the unlawful ones, which is kind of like, it sounds like what you're asking for, open season. They just put the info out on there on the net. Anybody who has a reclaimer or a team can go and make a claim and hold it down. So it'll be interesting to see how those pan out.
Yeah, it'd be good to kind of see that bear more fruit when other gameplays come around. So like when scanning comes in, you'll be able to, and data collection, you'll be able to take that wreck and sell it and stuff like that. And you can see the loops forming already. Yeah.
I think we might see mining expand in the next patch, because it sounds like they're talking about those missions the same way they talk about the salvage missions, just a little bit less detailed. So I think they're a little bit behind.
I think there's a little bit of low-hanging fruit there when it comes to the mole. I think they could put in, because how they've kind of got the one rock and they've just made it so it works for the mole. There's obviously got to be bigger rocks coming from the mole, just like there's got to be bigger rocks coming for the Orion. So I think that's a bit of low hanging fruit. Maybe they're waiting for the mole and they'll do the Orion and the mole at the same time. I'm not sure. But again, taking those missions from Salvage and using them in mining, I think that's really it's as I said, low hanging fruit. If you're doing one, you might as well do both. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Finally, just of the things we know about 319 so far. Last thing we have to go over are new missions coming to the Ghost Hollow Reclaimer Derelict on Microtech. This is a place where I think as of 317.2, we had NPCs walking around outside and inside. They would attack you if you got near. There were some loot boxes, but generally this was kind of like just an FPS area that you'd clear out in a couple minutes as long as your FPS stayed above 10 frames per second. What do you think of this?
So I think it's kind of interesting because it shows that they are starting to work on missions. Like we've now seen 2 in 1 patch, So for me, it shows that we are rounding the corner on things like PES and server meshing and moving away from Squadron 42 and into Star Citizen. So these are all really good signs, right? That like the almost like the passing of the baton. It's going to be slow, right? And obviously, as you've experienced with PES, it's going to take a bit of time, but it's all progress, yeah. Well, that's how I see it. What about yourself? Do you see that as progress, or am I off the mark there?
Absolutely. I was saying last year was a good year for gameplay with Star Citizen, and I might have jumped the gun a little bit. I think it was a good year. I think between seeing things like Salvage come in, well, okay, see that stuff was PTU, so push it to the next year. But between the different missions we got last year, we saw ground missions start to pick up. We saw Siege of Orison happen, new PvP encounters with Jumptown and stuff like that. So I think last year was fairly good for gameplay, but this year is where it really feels like it's starting to kick in. They're getting missions for different professions. They're getting supporting features like vehicle tractor beams on board. You can tell that they have a bit more of a organized idea of how missions should lead into sandbox gameplay. So it's definitely more confidence building for kind of our Star Citizen players actually going to have tangible differences in gameplay by the end of the year. Yes, 100% yes of 2023.
Have you had a chance to jump in a Reclaimer yet with a couple of buddies?
Oh yeah,
and actually, it's really fun. Like
yeah.
it's the first real. Like I know we had the mole thing, but it was really just one person driving, one person lasering. And I know it sounds weird just to add that extra thing of someone at the back moving the cargo boxes around, but it feels like you're working together. It's really strange.
It's fun, but I would say I'd only probably do it like a few hours a week. Like it's fun, but it's not quite to the point where a salvager has a full career,
Can you imagine what it's like though, just by adding munching? Like as soon as so now it's stripping.
I mean,
munching.
Not even munching.
Then,
like if somebody had the job of organizing in the back, because like as the cargo person in the back, it's cool to move stuff around, but you're doing like 2 boxes every few minutes. You spend a lot of time just kind of standing there talking. I think once
what crew you're working with, it's like every 20 seconds there's a box with.
I guess it depends on which metal you're doing. We were on a bad server too, where like the boxes just would not be sent out to me. So I don't know. I think it's great. I think it's a good fun, and it shows a good sign for the future.
Pro tip then, do the panels, don't do the ships. You get more materials off the panels. And Crunchy taught me actually, when you're scanning, you're looking for items that are divisible by 2000. If you can divide it by 2000, then chances are it's panels. So
divide what? Its signature?
Yeah, it's RS signature. So if it says like 8,000, it's most likely 4 panels. If it says 20,000, then it's it's 10 panels. Things like that.
We'll look into that.
Yeah.
Going back to this Ghost Hollow mission though, the interesting part about this mission is that it's a PvP mission in an area that has always been PvE. Do you think that they're combining it to make sort of a 3-faction kind of battle occur? You're supposed to be holding down terminals, they say, and get big credit payouts for holding down certain areas of this crashed ship. This is a pretty in-depth mission.
What does it remind you of that is coming in 318?
That's coming in 318? Oh, Korea.
Yeah. That's what it reminds me of. It's another kind of Korea-like thing. That's what the feeling I got when I looked at it. I don't know if you feel quite the same, but I think they're trying to make kind of like points of interest, so to speak, you know.
Right.
And I guess this is not, you know, to remove your crime stat or whatever, but it is a pretty good place, you know, like it is a point of interest, and there's nothing quite else like it in the game at the moment. So, you know, take that, add to the thing where you know, they're trying to test NPCs there, they're trying to test the PvP. You can see these are all things that are pointing towards that PES and server meshing tech at the end of the year. So they're kind of getting things ready for that as well. I don't know. That's just where my brain is going. You correct me if you think I'm wrong.
Well,
But they haven't tested systems like this before, have they?
no, and I think you're right. This is a good testing scenario for them. I just wonder if this is a regular thing they want to do with all locations. Are you going to Korea everything, or is this a sort of closed situation where you're trying to lock down an archetype for a certain type of mission? Because now, is Ghost Hollow always going to be this place where if I go there because I just want to shoot some FPS, I'm always going to have to deal with somebody else getting pinged to come fight me? Because I might just want to be able to go to a Reclaimer Derelict and clear it out and just fight some NPCs.
It could be as simple as what happened with Korea. They, you know, they realized Korea really needs to be used for its crime stat removal, and they've now doubled up. So they've kind of like, well, now we need to make one that doesn't require the crime stat, so people can actually go do their crime stat and not be hassled. I really don't know. But I do kind of don't want it to be like that. What you're suggesting, where everywhere is this event thing.
Yeah,
I think it feels like a test, is what I'm trying to say in short.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. What I would love to see with this mission is, because I imagine the way it works is you go in there, you clear out some pirates, they start to get dropship recruitments. Maybe there's the chance that you're making money. The system, quantum, whatever it is, sends out a ping to everybody saying, "Hey, there's a lot of potential to be made here. Ninetales are swarming the area. Come get in." You have PvP coming in to fight you. You have regular drop ships coming in. What I would love to see, and I think they really missed the opportunity here, is for reputation to make sure that if you have high reputation with Ninetales, they'll fight with you instead of against you.
Oh, that'd be
That
cool.
would be great.
Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's the other side of the coin mission. It could be that too. You know,
Man,
you might be onto something. You could be onto something there.
I feel like they would say that.
At all.
I feel like they would have said something about the rep updates, but you know, you could wish. I think that'll happen at some point.
The blowback with piracy? Oh, I don't know. Maybe they're too scared to say anything. That's one thing I learned with I did a show with Moist and Agent, and that was my real big takeaway is I want to get out there and like I've never really kind of been into piracy. I've never really even thought about it, but doing that episode is like I should try this. We are in a beta. It is the perfect time to try it, like, and find out if piracy is a thing for me. Now I know it's not going to be for everyone. I might hate it, but like again, if you're ever going to try it, isn't this the test bed, the area to test it out and see if it's for you?
Yeah, and we've got our org is like very much no non-consensual PvP, like don't attack people if you're not in a hot zone. So like this would be a place where we're like, because Korea, Jumptown, you know, go ahead. That's a place where people are coming to test that kind of stuff. This is the kind of place where it's like, are we going to make that rule? And as you said, this is a great patch to test piracy. And we want to make sure that our org has a good rep and like people understand who we are. But I also want people to be able to test all parts of the game. So we have to kind of figure out how we're going to approach that as well.
Yeah. I think it stops you from being hypocritical, because if you can at least say, look, I tried it, you can then have a more accurate response to just how you feel. And I think that's a good basis for everything in this game, to be honest. Like I'm going to go through and try every single profession, and I know I'm not the only one that's going to do that.
Everybody should try everything. Let's talk about building interiors as a kind of a last feature. We're going to talk about that, and then I actually am going to ask you a question about patch numbers, the kind of drama surrounding them, and how you feel about why they're numbered and if they should be numbered and all that. But first, let's talk about building interiors. Probably one of the biggest features. You know, I didn't think it was. I knew it was kind of a big deal, but until that ISC we just saw, I did not think it was going to be as big a feature as it is. So give me your take on it.
My first thought was just how well they designed it with like they'd really thought out the different levels of buildings and stuff like that, because I thought about it years ago and I had a very, very similar thought. So, not to my own horn there, I just was like, okay, cool, you know, great minds think alike type of thing. And they'd even gone further than I had. And as I said earlier, like once I saw those lobbies, I could, like, you know how I said it was tools within tools earlier. like the, making the tools bigger and adding to it. The next step after this is what I said. You could essentially get to procedurally generated landing zones, which is just insane to me. So we can actually go out in a Carrack and it generates a system just for us, if we wanted that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you could even have that as a jump point that goes off into your own private server, and that's just your system, and no one else can go there. Like it opens up the future. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, right? I'm just saying, what if, right?
Yeah.
And I'm trying to put the thought out there into people's heads of where this could go and where this could lead. And it really it's like a blossoming flower. It just opens up all these different possibilities, and it really got my mind ticking over. And I'm trying to do the same thing with you and the people listening. It's connected a lot of dots, like you can start to see just the potential is kind of scary, actually, because it's just going to be this almost never-ending game. If they want it to be that, it is in essence shown me that final loop that I was missing, as I said earlier as well. And it's just, it's kind of a bit daunting, actually, when you start to think about where it could go.
So the way you're saying it is kind of they've built tools to be able to make planets rather quickly procedurally. Yep. They've built tools to make kind of city blocks a little bit faster. Yep. We know the landing zones are still the thing that take them the longest, but they're building tools to create city blocks, to create rooms, and now to create buildings.
Add a room system for the ships. You take that and put that back into the buildings, right? We also know that what are you were about it this tonight? The thing they showed off with the hammerhead, as in the different circuitry and stuff like that. So
resource management.
Resource management, you can put that into buildings too.
Yeah, that'll definitely.
See where I'm going? It counts into the mission system. People carried on about how the elevators are really complicated, but you now all of a sudden can see how elevators can work in a building. Everything working as Lego pieces and just connecting together below and above terrain, and everything to metrics, much just like the example I gave when I was talking with Paul earlier today was how you've got an SCU cargo container, but then you've got a quad SCU cargo container that has 8 that fits in the other one. So you can essentially have the whole building system working as these cubes that just interlock with each other in different sizes and scales. And as long as the entrances and exits line up, you're fine.
And as you understand it, what's the point of this system? What are they trying to do with the building interiors?
It's a world editor, is it not? Isn't that what they're trying to build? This tool will be a world editor that they hand off to the people at Montreal, and not just building a landing zone, but they can use it to build. It's the world editor. You can, if you can literally essentially drop down an origin point for a city and turn it into a city. We went even further today. We were like, what if you could make it so these buildings being procedurally generated could be constructed? So you know how the city feels lived in because you've actually got cranes. So over time, you could see the different stages of the building pile on top of itself.
Oh boy!
And then if a building got too old, it gets taken down as well.
Jeez.
See what I mean? And this is all possible with those tools. It is possible if they do it the right way. It would just require the architectural building to be built in pieces, which they're probably going to do as well, because then you can set the size of the building, and then they can reuse how they have like different tops, different middle sections, and different bottom sections. Just do that, and
sounds like we're
interesting.
We're SimCity Citizen now, huh?
Oh yeah, we started talking about SimCity Citizen.
Yeah,
quite a bit.
I don't know how deep I see it getting. From what we saw in the ISC, we didn't see the tool yet. So that's what I'm going to wait for. We saw the concept art. We know their ideas. I'm still waiting to see, though, what happens with the UGFs and this when it comes to the actual tool constructing them.
Well, it's a good thing, because that also leans over into player hubs as well and designing your own buildings. And can I own a building? Can I be Old Man Hurston and actually build like a really luxurious hotel for me and my Ulu girls?
Like Hurston would settle for one building.
You know what I mean? But can I be Space Tomato and Honey? Can I go out to some random place and build my tomato farm?
Jesus, cannibalism?
I don't know. Can I be Execute and have like a salvage wreck in the middle of, I don't know, whatever I choose to do. And it always comes back to, a lot of the time, I always come back to player choice. And this is just giving us lots of player choice. all those tools, and we went through everything. We went into shops, like how you can, they were talking about putting shops in those little lobbies, but you can also see the shop tool being used on the Banner Merchantman, the Privateer, space stations. So again, it's this cross-pollination. If you've heard about it before, you can go back to that and draw it and try and connect it to a system and see if it works, right? So that's what we were doing. We're going out there going, well, what are the other things that they can pull in to use inside these cityscapes? And it just become very vast, very, very quickly. And that's what I meant by I can start to see the closing of these loops. Like as they connect, you can start to see things that were connected to that connection. And you know what I mean? Like, so I'm connecting the dots essentially.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the only one doing it. I'd come up with something and then someone else would come up with something. And yeah, it's really interesting. It's very exciting because it you can tell I'm a little bit lost for words. But,
well, there's definitely a lot of what I always thought of Star Citizen, especially in the cities, because we've known that we've needed content in the cities. We knew they have plans for them. And a lot of us have looked at these landing zones and been like, this is good. This is a decent amount of space, but this isn't an expansive city like we kind of expected. And I know the vision changed, so the cities weren't as big once we got to that point. But it was always we always were like, these landing zones are going to expand. How are they going to do it? And this was the answer.
Exactly. And I think it, as I said, if you just keep adding things to that pool, so they add another statue, they add another park, they add another city bench, that city bench, and you have every different color, every different material, every different texture, you can see it very quickly. You can multiply that across an entire solar system. And as you just keep adding to it, here's the interesting thing though, right? In lore, they actually went back and they actually made different architecture over the 1,000 years from now to then, right? But here's the thing, I was talking about the building being taken down and then another building coming back up in its place. A new building that comes up in the next wave, or 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, it's a new design, and so all of a sudden that new design starts populating through you see where I'm going, like
with the insane game ideas.
but that works with everything, because if you bring out a new version of even just a city park bench,
but imagine
it starts to give you not really, because it's just updating as you go.
But
it's like they do in any game.
Would have to be updated. It's every planet, every village and city on every planet. That's a lot of computing power.
But if it's all procedural, it's possible. That's the scary thing. You do the math. Like, once it's there, it's all possible. And I can see the people at Salvage going, shut your mouth. But like, it is all possible, because you could just, like, you take down an old city park bench, like it's deconstructed, or they have some kind of thing to say under construction, and it gets taken down and they come out with a new style or a new color or whatever. It's all possible. And so instead of like what ArcCorp is at the moment, we have all these red buildings, it would be variety, different architecture, different colors, different styles.
You also have to wonder
more real.
You also have to wonder if it'd be worth it though. I mean, I understand the whole replacing buildings things, but you have to think if it's going to be worth it for them to do a whole, it looks like it's being built and deconstructed.
Well, you tell me. Paul kind of goes, but ArcCorp was constructed fairly quickly over 100 years. I went, well, if you look back, our oldest skyscraper is only 90 years old. So every skyscraper in existence is in that window. And look how far they've come in 100 years. So we have every cityscape on Earth is random and bespoke. So it'll be the same thing here. Like, you'd actually be able to look out, and instead of just having all these red buildings, yes, maybe there was a style for a 30-year period even that was all red, but then someone would change something. That's my whole point, is it'll just make them feel more alive. And other than just alive, or lived in, it'll make them feel alive because they're evolving. That's, that immersion factor, that just goes to 11.
Yeah, but I feel like I get that from Quantum.
Yeah.
But
it might be overkill. I could be wrong. It could be completely overkill, but like, it was just something it was just something I saw, and I went, this is not that much more steps to do. Because if you're doing that construction thing, and that's the thing, if we start seeing them do the construction, like building and deconstruction, I would then say that would be the next step after that. And yeah, I know there's people in the comments going, this guy is a freaking lunatic. But if you think it through, it's fairly clever.
It's CIG. They do this stuff, and I think they'll probably try and do something pretty wild with this. I'm not sure how far they'll go, but I think building interiors are going to be a very substantial addition to this game. probably something we'll talk about a ton this year, and probably something that's going to be kind of like how we talk about Outposts. We've been looking at Outposts for years now, getting produced and branching off in different ways and spawning new types of activities and ideas. And I think building interiors and the UGFs will probably be the same. They all feel kind of like the different archetypes of the game,
Yeah. It's the same thing with that. Like you've seen over time how they've added different styles to the Outpost system, and that's evolved as well, and then they can go back and cross-pollinate. So say you have some far off moon in Pyro that's really close to Stanton, so it's got Stanton influences, so it's somewhere between the two. You can see those things evolving. And it's just, if you've seen Dataforge and their editor, it's just all sliders. So again, if you can mix and match, like you can see very quickly, like it's in its infancy right now, but you multiply that out, like give it 5 years, they're having more stuff coming in, they've got more people that can be working on that stuff. It could be really, really deep. And again, we've got to do, right now, we've got one solar system and we've got to do 100. How do you make them all feel kind of unique and special?
If they ever get that far.
I'm seriously starting to see it though, man. Like they now have the tools to pull this off and go beyond the 100 if they really want to. They can now roll out. Was it last year? Actually, was it one of your videos? Some guy did 3 moons of microtech himself. What was it? One guy
in one
2
month.
months he did it with one patch cycle. He did like 3 moons or whatever.
Yeah, and
so
that was 4 years ago.
You get where I'm going, right? Like this just. You can have one guy probably build an entire city in a month.
And that's what I think we're all waiting to see. And the real roadblock on this, and that's why for a lot of people who hear about server meshing and see how hyped people are about server meshing, it's not just the effects of server meshing expanding the game. It's how many things we have at the very least been led to believe are blocked in a major way by the lack of server meshing. So when people talk about their excitement for server meshing, a lot of it is this stuff.
Can you possibly, and I'm just wanting you to entertain this, feel free to totally shoot me down. It starts as an outpost and more people come. So maybe on the other side of Loreville, the opposite. Can you see
I see where you're going.
Eventually this outpost grows and then you put down like a capital building or something like that. And then, you got to get to a certain population size. And so you put that down and it starts to build out and you knock down the old outposts and
you're combining
Loreville 2.0
Star Citizen with Dual Universe and what's that other MMO recently that came out where people can have like mayorship over towns and stuff. That is a hefty, that would be hefty. That'd be crazy.
But it's possible though, because they can go in and they can flatten the terrain. They can, remove mountains and stuff like that. So CIG could do that. That could be a thing.
The economy.
It may, but can you see where I'm going with this? Like this is the potential that this game has. And that is the benefit of the maturing of these tools. You need to start looking at what this game can do differently from other games, and it's scarily awesome. And this is just what I've come up with in the last couple of days. And I'm one guy. I got a whole team of people that are way smarter than I am. So you tell me. I think they're going to come up with some really, really interesting stuff in the next while.
I think they'll be pretty limited by their resources. I think they're setting up to be able to do a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, I think they're going to have to focus a lot on the core game and not be able to do a lot of the extra things these tools would allow them to do. But I look forward to seeing how much they can scale them up for sure. I think what we'll see here will be unmatched by other games. Maybe not for a long time, but at least right now while we're playing it.
Yeah, so you're saying this, they should stop and think whether they should or not.
I'm saying I think they already are. And they're probably trying to decide where they're willing to go above and beyond and where they're going to take some concessions with this stuff.
Yeah, there's I think diminishing returns. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But again, I just put that idea out there because the tool where they're at, it's not that far much further to go to get to that stuff, and that's the crazy thing. So maybe they don't do it initially, but it also means they could go back and update it to that. So maybe 5 years from now they could do that. So that's also really cool. Like just showing you the scope of the system. Yeah.
Well,
what's your question that you had for me?
Yeah, let's move on to the last question we've got, and this one is, I think, a hefty debate topic. This came up a lot last year. It's come up throughout the years, honestly, with how ever since 3.0, really, and how they've been dropping updates throughout the years. So we're getting 3.18, probably March, maybe February, sometime Q1, hopefully, of 2023. After that comes 3.19, which people view as the next major patch. After that, preferably, would be 3.20 and then 4.0.
Yep.
A lot of people have looked at the announcement of 3.19, which is kind of not. It's not being looked at the same as 3.18 in terms of the seriousness of it, and are very annoyed with the fact that it's been named 3.19. Do you have any feelings about that yourself?
I think it came about because a lot of people suggested that with the .17 patches that they weren't doing full patches, when in fact they are full patches. They take just as much work to get done. They've all got to be tested, QA'd, and all that type of thing. So I think a lot of it's been. Well, we saw this last year with the roadmap. They wanted to change perspective of, and the way people mentally thought of things. So because the numbers are going up, I think they think there's going to be a mentally perceived difference. I don't know. That's what it feels like to me. What about yourself? Does it just on that point? Does it feel like a mental shift for you? What they're trying to?
Them naming it 3.19 does sound like a reaction to last year. Now, I don't know exactly how it all works. I'm not a developer, never have been. But from what they've described, it sounds like when you're developing the game, you've got this just branch of stuff that's going in. And at some point, you have to say, okay, this is locked in. We're going to branch off so you can keep developing that while we polish this primary path of the game. And what they're saying is they branched off something in development for 3.18, and we're working on that. And they're still working on other features here. Instead of taking this branch, this main branch that's getting all these features worked in, and putting that into the game, they're taking this and updating it with some of the features from that main branch, right? So the whole idea is that they're basically taking what they would have released and saying, this isn't actually ready to go out, but some of these features will work with what we've already released, and moving that in. And people feel like that doesn't warrant a full number shift.
You know what's scarier? And I've got a video for you that you can do on this if you want. How scary and how much time would it actually save if they just stopped updating the branches to us? Well, just keep working on the game.
Yeah, I mean I did a talk about that last week because the Satisfactory devs came out and said basically the same thing as Star Citizen. Hey, trying to update this game for you guys while we're making it slows it down a ton, and we can't catch all the bugs. And I did a little poll. Most people thought it was the Star Citizen devs that said it, but it's pretty universal. And so I think last year when they started to do 3.17.2, which should have been 3.18, or they wanted it to be 3.18. I guess they just don't want to do that because they got nonstop, constant focus on the fact that what the number was and not the features in it.
I also think it was kind of for a lot of people one of their first lull periods. We've had some big lull periods. You would have heard people saying, "Oh, that's nothing compared to 1 year where because there was 1 year, we had to wait 8.5 months between patches." When I think that was one of the ones was when 3.0 came out. That was a huge long wait to get 64-bit out the door. There's been a few. I think there's been 3 or 4 of them now. It's just been a while since we've had one. Then again, we have every year we have the 2. So we have the Christmas to they come
February.
back, where we're just getting through now, and then around August we have another one. So we always have those. We always have those lull periods.
But do you think? Sorry.
Really long ones. I was going to say really long ones are just hard to deal with, especially if you're a new player. You come in and it's like, why am I hearing anything? And let's be honest, and they do bring it up a lot. We get a lot more feedback from them as developers than almost any other game under the sun. And I'm not white knighting here. I've just learned not to, as a content creator, and I know you're a bit the same, don't rely on it because they're under no obligation to kind of really tell us anything as game developers. That we are in a very unique situation here where they are kind enough to share stuff with us.
I think they set their expectation. I think if they weren't, nobody would trust them because that's what they base their whole campaign on. They do have to share. But do you think that it's reasonable how much crap they got for the numbers last year?
Again, I kind of put it like, you remember when they changed the roadmap and they kind of came out and said you don't understand game development?
Yeah.
It kind of is true. There are a lot of people. Let me put it this way: when a new person comes into the game, I don't think they do understand game development. I actually think they learn a lot pretty quickly. But there are constantly new people coming in, and one of the reasons I think it's a lot of new people is you go to Spectrum, and when you read that stuff, it is people that have not been there very long. So that they are coming in and they're using Spectrum to educate themselves, but they're just venting their frustrations. And, maybe that's one of the reasons why it seems a little more toxic there than other places. But I don't generally see someone that's been around as long as yourself or myself with these complaints. And if they are, they're generally having a really bad day.
I feel like I do, man. I don't
Really?
know. I
Okay.
feel because it's very widespread. I'm surprised, to be honest, and maybe I'm the one who's a little off base. I'm surprised at how much people focus on the actual patch number as opposed to the features or like the patch notes themselves. Like
You and I,
if we got
you and
3
I
point
Sorry, I was gonna say you and I do have very different audiences though. Like I would say you have a lot more general audience than I do. You have a further reach than I've got, right? But mine's smaller. But and I don't mean this as an insult, so please don't take that. But I would say I've got a definitely more hardcore crowd, right? And
yeah,
so maybe they're just slightly more stoic.
it could be the
Yeah, I don't
case.
know.
I think maybe CIG themselves put too much focus on the numbers.
Yeah.
That could be a byproduct of just how long they've been doing this.
Hmm.
But the difference between calling something 3.18.1 and 3.19, I don't know. And this is not to make an excuse. I don't know how important it is. It's the difference between looking at Google Chrome 2.1 and Google Chrome 3.0. I don't care what the number is. I care about what they're adding into it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. I was just kind of waiting for you to finish. It's the features. It's not the number. 100% every single time. And you go back and look at what we got last year, even in those incremental patches, they were pretty on par with full-fledged patches, my book. It's just that it was almost like they really wanted to save the 318 number for,
Yeah, they
for
said it and
pairs. Yeah.
they had to
And it's the
stick to
same
it.
thing. Like they want to, they've kind of said with 4.0, 4.0 was Pyro. So they're saving it. So it's the same thing. 318 was pairs. So they
Yeah,
were saving it.
I
And if
think
you start to look at it like that, it's no big deal.
those numbers 3.0, 4.0, those kinds of things do have a lot of importance to me.
Yeah.
But I honestly I don't remember which patches had which features. Like if you ask me, the only patch I think I remember specifically what had which features was 315 because it was so major, and 318 because it's so big. But if you ask me which patch had the personal what was it, the Mo Trader app where you could send money, like, I don't know. I just remember it being added. So that being said, like last year they set themselves in a tough spot where 318 was delayed, and they basically had to release patches to update events, to do bug fixes, to add in some features with 317 too. They painted themselves into a corner. Was there any way out of that besides just like not doing it again this year?
I just think they're going to go up in numbers now because again, it's that changing of perception. Because I actually look back to what dot, how they used to go like 17.x patch or whatever, or dot patches. Until that point last year, the only time they'd use dot patches were things where they were like, we have to delay this patch, so we're going to do a dot patch for AIE or a dot
I
patch for
don't think that's
Invictus.
true. I think they
No?
were doing dot patches for almost every patch just as a stabilizing thing. Like, weren't we getting a dot patch
Yeah,
almost
okay.
like a month in,
Okay,
almost
yep.
every single update?
Okay, I'll give you that. Yes, they did have patch ones. Yes, no, I'll give you those.
The past the point ones, I agree with you on that.
But can you see the perception there, though? Where in the past, if they were just little patches and fixes, and then all of a sudden they're using the same thing for full-blown patches, you can see where the perception has come from then.
Yeah, and that's
Right?
why it's like, don't look at the number.
Yeah, so again, so I think that's why they're doing it. They're trying to change the perception.
Right. This is the same thing with the roadmap.
Yeah, and so they're now just going to have to be really careful when they say 3.22 or whatever. Like is going to be for this, because now they can't use the incrementals. They're going to be stuffed if they can't get the 3. Well, 322 is now 323, and 322 is just a fix for 321. You know, like you can see where it's going to get real confusing real quick.
This is just another of those open development problems. It's just like the roadmap. They gave enough information that it put them in a bad spot. And then they had to correct for that bad spot, which made the community unhappy, which happens with all the feature delays. Now they're making the fix, which was shortening the roadmap. This fix being changing the numbers, which again makes people unhappy, but makes more sense in the long run.
It's just I think we'll come back to the general ones. It's about communication, letting us know, and explaining it. And I think the other part you got to remember is they do have a staffing problem, as you and I have talked about on a few occasions, and Paul as well. And you know, it's sometimes they're not best at communicating because they just don't have the people to do so. Like I bring this up all the time now. Once I found out, was they've only late last year they got a 4th community manager. I still find that kind of laughable. You know, like the size of this game, 5 studios that literally spans the globe, and they've only got 4 people. They don't even have 1 per studio. That's, you know, and if there's more studios that now, if you can, you know, the expansion of Montreal and Derby and stuff like that, but you get where I'm going very quickly. Like they need more people, and they I don't know if it's whether they can afford them or find them, because that's another discussion topic that you and I can get into another day. Is the CryEngine, there is not as many people that make games on that engine anymore. Like, how much further could we have been along if they'd used the Unreal Engine, because it would have been quicker to find staff, so it would be further. Not that it would have taken longer to do, just having more people to throw at it would have moved it forward more. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, things like that. Like, so just remember, they are people at the end of the day, and people have issues, and you know, families and pets and dogs and cats and all that type of thing. And we also just went through COVID, and you can see as a whole in the entire gaming industry, not just CIG. Look at how crappy the games were that it came out in the last 12 months, because they were pushed out by publishers that didn't account for what do you call it? Didn't account for people not being together and being able to collaborate as well. I guarantee you that was money people pushing that the door, going, well, normally you have 3 years to make a game. It should have been done by now. Tough shit's going out. And that's why we saw a lot of games that came out that were half-baked, in my opinion. And that's another subject for a video there too, Space. All the videos that would have been better if they had more, all the games that would have been better if they had more time.
Yeah,
be a long list.
There's a balance to be had. I think, they've got a tough business model to push. The whole selling ships to make the game, but those ships might not have the features because they're building the tech that makes those features, and then also Squadron 42. They've got a tough freaking business model to run. The fact that they've kept going this long is a testament to the success, but also it's frustrating in some ways. So
let's bring that full circle right back to the Scorpius. Like, you can say that Scorpius is not for you, but you can see why they have a need to sell it, because we have to fund this game, you know, and it is a means to an end. And you know, Squadron 42 will come out. Hopefully, it'll do really well, and then it'll shift, and maybe we won't have to buy as many ships after that. But
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Well,
we have a terrible connection today, bro. It just keeps dropping.
Yeah, it's terrible. But that about wraps things up, actually, for today. X, thank you so much.
Can I just say, though, no problems, but I just want to say, you probably got really bad internet there with what's happened this week for you guys. So, yeah, I hope you guys are okay over there. And
it hasn't really, we're clear on the other side of the country, so I think we're doing all right in our place. We just generally have a rough internet provider here, but we'll get there someday. Either way, though, thank you so much for joining me, Julian. No problem. I appreciate you coming on and talking about 319, especially the Scorpius. That was kind of a surprise. I didn't expect that to come up in the pod today. Can you tell everybody once again, Inforunners, where they can find your content? I'm gonna make you do the marketing pitch, so get it ready.
I'm really terrible at it. Just YouTube/Inforunners or YouTube.com/Inforunners. Myself, Agrid, Space, Astropub, Loken. I'm sure I've missed a few people in there as well, but there's a whole bunch of us in there, you know, and work together. And Inforunners specifically generally focuses a lot more on ships and economic stuff and looking towards the future and a lot of gameplay stuff. But yeah, down the line we'll change and move with the game. And I think you've even done that yourself, haven't you, Space, as time goes on?
Content's going to change, yeah. As the game changes, so will content. It it becomes less about talking about what will happen and more about focusing on what's going on. So I enjoy that too.
I think that's a big thing I would say about Inforunners. It's our special thing is we always like to have multiple people and multiple opinions. I think that would be the real big takeaway for me. And I think I know Paul's told me this, that we've inspired him with things and he's inspired us with things. So we have rubbed off on each other. And I would hope to think that, I know you've rubbed off on me. So I'd hope to think that me and Argrid and the others have rubbed off on you somewhat as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's been great collaborating like that. And it's one of the best things about this game, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Definitely. And thank you, everybody who came to watch this live. If you are here as a supporter in Discord with us, anybody who is a supporter of Space Tomato, Patreon, Ko-fi, YouTube, whatever it is, Twitch even, you can come and join these podcasts live and ask questions and talk to the guests if you'd like to. And if you're watching this on YouTube, consider checking out the audio platforms. They're ad-free. Our supporters keep it ad-free. We're very thankful for you.
Can I give a thanks to Honey for editing this episode?
Yes, as always, Mrs. Tomato holding it down, editing this and most of the videos on the second channel. Big thanks to her. And
Thanks,
once
Honey.
again, a thank you, everybody, for watching. I'll see you next week on episode 1. Have a good one.